Chapter 1. Stone Never Betrays. The day my brothers tried to exclude me from the legacy, they accidentally handed me the only tool of influence they could never control. They drove away without looking back. The glare of their limousines faded into the fog, leaving me alone with Blackwood Hall. My brothers chose the glass towers of Manhattan, fragile digital cages that crumble with a single keystroke. To me, they threw the keys to this ruin. I stood at the threshold, gripping the cold iron. My father didn't trust the cloud. He trusted copper and granite, because stone doesn't betray. Reputations can be faked, but the mechanical truth walled into these stones 30 years ago, that is immutable. I turned the key and the heavy oak door began to yield. But before I could touch it, a hand in black leather did it for me. Dante. He never opens doors for the living. To him, they simply don't exist. But here, he paused, waiting for me to pass first. It wasn't politeness. It was a signal, my first gift from the shadow that now belonged to me. Chapter 2. The Mechanical Reckoning. The house was alive. It had no off switch. There was no internet inside, only a complex web of counterweights and copper veins that caught every vibration in the air. It was a permanent witness. My father wasn't just seeking justice, he was designing my destiny. Dante followed me like a ghost. In this city, people don't fear him for cruelty. They fear him because power itself bends, just to avoid disappointing him. But with me, Dante was different. He never called me by my name like the others. To the world, I was a problem, an exile. To him, he was Donna. And when I fell silent, he didn't try to fill the void with words. He listened to my silence as if it held all the answers in the world. We stood before the primary vault in the foundation. The mechanism was jammed. Decades of dust had seized the steel. I felt his presence behind me, the scent of sandalwood, bitter coffee, and ice-cold composure. Dante did something no one in this city has ever seen. He hesitated. A half-second of calculation, his only risk, his voluntary vulnerability. Slowly, using his teeth, he pulled the glove from his right hand. The sound of sliding leather in the absolute silence sent a shiver through me. His bare fingers, hot, terrifyingly strong, covered my wrist. The contact was so intimate, the air in the room turned thick, like lead. "Waiting for your decision," he whispered. He wasn't commanding. He was waiting for a command from me. I turned the lever. The mechanical groan of the house announced the beginning of the end. The recordings were already flying out, not to the authorities, but to the boards of directors and the private lodges of old money. My brothers didn't just go broke. In that minute, their status was annulled, stripped of their name and their future. That evening we stood on the terrace. Boston sparkled below, but it didn't feel vast anymore. From this height, it looked manageable. I looked at Dante. He was back in his gloves, back to being a myth. "Why did you stay?" I asked. He looked out at the city that now belonged to me and replied, "Because powerful women are a rarity, and once in a lifetime, a man is offered the privilege of standing beside one." I smiled. Justice isn't when your enemies are punished. Justice is when you build your empire on their wreckage, while the most formidable man in this city simply waits for your next word. The first wave hit 40 minutes later, In the world of old money, no one calls the police. They simply stop answering the phone. Through Blackwood Hall's hidden lenses, I watched my brothers pacing their penthouses. Their accounts were frozen pending an investigation the house had graciously curated for their private bankers. But Blackwood Hall wasn't just destroying them, it was absorbing them. Every deal they'd made, every hidden asset was being woven into the copper veins of this house, becoming part of a new, invisible network. The room grew chilly. I felt a heavy, perfectly scented cashmere throw settle over my shoulders. Dante, his hand, still bare, gloveless, lingered near my neck for a heartbeat. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel the quiet heat radiating from him. His fingers barely brushed the air above my skin, a gesture that felt like a silent, unbreakable oath. "This is only the first node," he whispered. His voice vibrated through the very air of the room. "My father and yours built similar ruins in London, Paris, and Singapore. Blackwood Hall is the heart. The others are waiting for you to wake them up." I looked at him, and in the dim light, his eyes sparked with a cold, predatory pride. He wasn't my protector, he was my general. "You knew it would come to this, didn't you, Dante?" I asked. He dropped to one knee, a gesture of absolute, almost religious devotion. His fingers brushed the hem of my silk gown. "I knew that when you woke up, the world would become too small for your brothers, and very comfortable for you, Donna." When they burst into the hall, they looked pathetic. My eldest brother lunged forward, trying to reclaim power through violence, the final argument of weak men. Dante intercepted his arm with such ease it was as if he were stopping a feather. He didn't strike him, he simply gripped his wrist, and I heard the sound of my brother's last shred of confidence shattering. "You are guests here." Dante's voice was low, yet the walls of the house seemed to amplify it into a roar. "And in this house, guests are not permitted to raise their voices to the architect." I stood up. The rustle of my silk gown against the marble floor was the only sound in the sudden silence. "You thought you buried me here," I said, stepping toward them, feeling the house breathing in unison with me. "But you simply returned me to the control room. Your empire was built on lies. Mine is being built on stone." I didn't throw them out. I simply showed them their new place, in my network. Now they would work for me, without even realizing they were doing it. When the door closed behind them, I stepped out onto the terrace. Boston sparkled below, but I didn't see lights anymore. I saw lines of communication, capital flows, the architecture of a power I was about to redraw. From the terrace, the city doesn't look vast anymore. It looks like a first draft. Dante stepped up behind my shoulder. His hand, back in its black leather glove, rested on the railing next to mine. "It's already dawn in London," he said, looking east, "and our asset in Mayfair has signaled. It recognized your code, Evelyn." I smiled. This wasn't the finale of my revenge. It was the opening of the first page. Blackwood Hall wasn't a fortress for protection. It was a shipyard where a new world order was being built. I looked at Dante. The most dangerous man in the city was waiting for my word to ignite the lights in the next city on the map. "Set the flight for London," I said. Dante bowed his head in a deep, status-heavy nod. "As you command, Donna. The beginning is set." The vibration of the jet at 30,000 feet didn't feel like flight. It felt like the pulse of power itself. In this cabin there was no Wi-Fi, only a secure line hardwired into the copper heart of Blackwood Hall. My brothers were currently trying to cash out the remnants of their lives, unaware that I had already replaced their signatures in every registry in Europe. I traced the old paper maps of London with my fingertips. The old parchment was dry and grainy, smelling of history and inevitability. In Mayfair, it's not just a house waiting for us. Dante's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. He stepped closer, and I caught the scent of his tobacco and the icy wind he seemed to have brought with him from the tarmac. He handed me a glass, the finest crystal, which looked almost weightless in his hands. His black leather fingers brushed mine as I took the glass. It was a second of pressure, heavy with hidden heat. "Your father called it the network of sleeping stones," he whispered, leaning over the map. His breath caught the back of my neck, sending a shiver through me that I couldn't hide. London, Paris, Berlin. Every house is a node. Every node is a lever of influence over those who believe they rule this world. I looked at him. In this enclosed space, his presence was almost tactile, overwhelming everything else. "And you are the keeper of all these levers?" "No." He looked directly into my eyes, and the devotion there made my heart still. "I am the one who holds them for you, so your hands never have to get dirty in the machinery." I took a sip, feeling the warmth of the wine bloom inside me. We weren't just crossing an ocean. We were crossing the border between revenge and eternity. London met us with the scent of wet asphalt and old gold. The Mayfair mansion stood like an impenetrable bastion amidst the modern noise. No cameras, no smart locks, only a heavy brass knocker in the shape of a lion's head. Dante walked half a step ahead, his silhouette in a long black coat merging with the London fog. He stopped at the door, and there it was, that split-second hesitation. He slowly pulled the glove from his hand, revealing the bare skin that had touched my wrist only yesterday. This was his ritual, his way of showing the house, and me, that here he is not a monster. Here he is home. He pressed a heavy bronze key into my hand. It was warm from his palm. "Turn it 3 times," he commanded, in a low, almost tender voice, "and the world you once knew will finally cease to exist." I inserted the key. The mechanism responded with a deep musical chime. The door swung open, revealing a hall lined with the same copper pipes and magnetic reels as Blackwood Hall. But here, on the wall, hung a map of the world, dotted with hundreds of glowing amber lights. Each light was a family, a corporation, a politician, and they were all tethered to this room. I walked to the map and placed my palm over Europe. The stone of the walls vibrated under my fingers. This was the architecture of absolute control. "Where do we begin?" I asked, not turning around. I felt Dante stand directly behind me. He didn't touch me, but I felt his power, his readiness to destroy anything at my word. "With those who helped your brothers," he replied. "We won't just punish them, we will make them the foundation of your new empire." I smiled at my reflection in the dark glass of the map. Revenge ended in Boston. Here, in the London fog, a story was beginning that the world would learn by heart. "Welcome to the system, Dante," I whispered. "I never left it, Donna. I was just waiting for my architect."